Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle NSFW. We are on the Survivor NSFW network, the home of the great Johnny Fairplay, and we are here to discuss episodes 4 to 8 of the Circle Brazil. I am joined today with two amazing guests. One is Kim Mattina. Hi, Kim. Kim is a returning guest. Kim was the winner of Sequester Season 2. Welcome.
I was. Thank you.
And then we have an amazing guest. We can't imagine that you're here, Professor Tin, but I guess you're locked up and bored, and so we got you. Tim was on The Circle Season 2 in the UK. He was our fan favorite. He was our robbed G. Odd. And he's here to talk to us about The Circle Brazil. Now, if you don't know who Tim is a former monk. He's a former candidate for British Parliament. He's currently or former professor of theology. Or I guess this is.
I'm a current professor, I think, actually.
You are a current professor, but I assume your school is closed at the moment?
Well, I haven't been back there since the Circle. It's in Russia, so that creates some problems. So no, but I teach online really whenever I can. And I teach the whole range, all the way from primary school all the way up to university. So I seem to do the whole lot, and I don't seem to be restricted to religion. I've been doing, the other day I was teaching Latin and some history and some English, and I've just been finishing a TV series. It's the first work I've done since coming out of the Circle, which is very exciting. One of our national TV channels rang me up in a sort of panic about a week ago and said, "Oh, I can't tell you what they said, but they wanted 5 illustrations for houses which no longer exist, historical houses that no longer exist." And in fact, in the end they wanted 8, and it was an absolute joy to do it, because I've done some series for other channels in the same manner. I did some series for a lady called Lucy Worsley, and she was looking at British history and then American history, and it was American history's biggest fibs. Now, a fib in British sort of colloquial language is a lie, right. And so it was fascinating looking at sort of American history through the sort of propaganda, and how that changes, and British history through propaganda. Now she's doing royal history, and in the end, I couldn't do the royal history, so that was a great shame. But I have been able to pick up this one about houses, and it's just wonderful. I love history, and I love making that real. Maybe I'm going to become a piece of history.
Well, right now we're all a part of history.
Well, I think our job as human beings, and all those who are watching us now, I think our job is to make history rather than follow history. We should follow history as well, but we should follow it so that we know how to make history, so later generations will think, "Oh, what exciting people you were in the 2020s." I've got Instagram pings on my computer, I'm afraid. I don't know how to switch them off. So if anybody's got any great idea, wait a minute. I'm going to press this little button here. Maybe that will close them. That hasn't closed anything else. So let's see if any more things ping. You were saying lovely things, and I've interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
Okay. So I also should just say that, we are living, obviously, we're in the time of coronavirus. We are not trying to minimize any of that. We hope that everybody is watching who is healthy and safe and self-isolating or doing their essential job. And, they are really our heroes right now. But we're just going to put all of that aside right now and talk about a Brazilian TV show, because that's kind of the best we can do right now.
Right.
Again,
well, we can put it all aside in one sense, but in another sense, one of the extraordinary things, I don't really know what sequestered involves. I am going to ask you, Kim, but certainly the Circle, in many ways, was a very good preparation for being self-isolating.
Oh, well, the Circle is suddenly very, very topical, right? We have a bunch of people in separate apartments. It's amazing.
Yeah, in fact, there was a rather nice journalist who rang me up from the New York Times the other day and said that he was pitching an article about about its relevance, and would I be interested in talking to him? And of course, the answer is yes. So if he gets his editor's approval, I would be delighted to do something about that. But it's and what can you do when you're self-isolating? And it seems to me, so if you don't mind me topping and tailing your show with this sort of advice to try and make it relevant, it seems to me, as somebody who's actually been in that situation, as somebody who also, having been a monk as well, and having lived on a mountainside with 100 goats, in fairly rank isolation and very smelly isolation, the thing that it seems to me that you've got to do is to invest in routine, invest in trying to do something new all the time. So try to find something new to do, or try to find some new way of doing something, or new way of looking at something. But most importantly, you need projects. You need to feel that you're creating something, so that when you come out of this, you've actually got something to show for it. Because nothing is going to be more debilitating than just simply sitting and waiting.
Right.
So you want to, now is the time, ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to start shouting at your television, to start shouting at your computer screen, to say, no, Wilson, shut up. What a ridiculous thing you're saying. That's the sort of engagement, that's sort of creativity that is at our fingertips, isn't it? But we want to go beyond that. We want to all come out of this. So waving our new novel or our memoirs, and we should all be keeping a diary, because in years to come, our children, our grandchildren, our nephews, nieces are going to say, "What did you do in this great period?" And you're going to be able to say, "Oh, well, look, I kept this amazing document, and so I know what I did every day." And because at the moment it seems a bit boring and a bit I haven't got rid of that noise. It seems a bit boring and a bit routine. But in a few months' time, this isn't going to be boring and routine. This is going to be something extremely novel, and we hope completely rare, and which will never be repeated. And therefore, we need to document it, because we are living through that. It's awful to say something like this about something so dreadful and something so awful and so soul-destroying and earth-changing, but we are privileged to do something unique.
Right.
And we need to make sure we pass that on to the next generation. So we need to take notes about what we're doing and how we get through this. And that is the least we can do. And there's so much more I think we can do.
Right. I love the idea of daily journaling and thoughts, and not only what you're doing, but what you're thinking throughout the day, and how things progress and all of that. I think that's a fantastic idea. The other thing that I'm prepared, if it happens that I end up having to be isolated, I appreciate accomplishment, finishing something. So my big thing is I will get up every morning and I will make my bed, because if you make your bed, you've accomplished something, right? You have finished.
Kim, you're so much better than me. I assume that Bay is going to make my bed. Bay hops into my bed the moment I get out of it, and that's where he remains most of the day at the moment, because he's sulking, because he's so angry at not being the top cat in the house.
Oh no!
And sometimes he comes crawling down the stairs and screaming at top volume, and then he will go back, and then he's fine once he's worked out that the day has actually started without him.
And
also sorry, go ahead, Kim.
No, I was just going to say, and we know that Siamese can be vocal. Both of us know that.
You've got two of them as well, haven't you?
Only one right now.
I've got two. So I have a cacophony. I have an entire orchestra, really, of Siamese cats. But one of them, Hannum, is now very old, and she's. What's extraordinary in the last year, she's lost her purr. So she no longer purrs; she just breathes deeply. It's a little bit like Joan Collins. It's the heavy breathing. It's the sort of sexy breathing that she does, and I think, that means she's happy. I ought to recall her Joan, really.
Name her.
She won't mind. I mean, I call my cat all sorts of things, right? I mean, I named mine Jenny Any Dots, but I realized that was way too long, and so she has a million nicknames, and she ignores all of them.
No.
So just back to the circle for a second. So Kim,
Yes.
I just have to ask you, because one of the
Well,
things
I had one of my cats in the circle with me, and I think my cat was much better at self-isolating in the circle than I was, and he was eventually very happy. It took a little while for him to settle in, but he was very happy. He was the lord of the circle, and he had his own fan base, and I think he had his own Twitter page.
well, he's a beautiful cat, so not surprising.
Well, he got to the point where he decided when I was going to go to bed, and he would get up here and then start pulling my glasses off, and he still does that. He's so inappropriate. I think at any moment now the claws are going to go in my eye. I wondered what he was doing to start with, but then I realised it's very sensible of him. These animals have so much more sense, so much sense of time than we do.
They do.
Yeah.
But he would only do this around bedtime. You're saying that he would say, "Okay,
Yes,
that's enough."
It's only bedtime, and he gets annoyed if I go to bed early, and he gets annoyed if I go to bed late. So, and I don't sleep for a long time, but I tend to go to bed about 1 o'clock, and I tend to be up at about 6. And Mrs. Thatcher slept for even less time, so I feel I'm doing very well.
Yes.
Bear is the guardian of my sleep, and once I think he stays awake all night while I'm asleep, and then when I get up, he goes to bed. He's done
That's pretty common cat behavior, right? They're nocturnal, right? I certainly hear mine making all sorts of fusses at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but he watches over me, which I find quite satisfying. Really, it's like having an angel. It is very nice.
Yeah, like I said, yours is watching over you, and mine is in the kitchen seeing what he can shatter. Just like
that's also a possibility, but Moses and the tablets. So
exactly.
It's all very spiritual.
So,
right.
Tim, one of the many things that you were famous for on In the Circle, and then also in some of your podcast appearances since, is your lack of knowledge of some common acronyms. Right?
Oh, I don't know anything. It's true.
Right.
It's true.
I saw the YouTube that you made with Alex, and it came up also again on RHAP. So I just have to ask you, because you are on the Circle NSFW.
SFW?
Yes. What do you think NSFW might stand for?
New NSF, New South Florida World. No. You're near New York, aren't you? So,
well, I'm near New York. Kim is on the West Coast, or close to the West Coast. She's on the other side of the country.
Oh my goodness, so you're at a different time frame. Complete. What time is it for you now, Kim? Right
now, for me, it is 11:22 in the morning. 11:21 in the morning.
That's a very healthy time. It's gone. It's I think it's pushing 7 o'clock or something, or 7:15 here in the evening.
Yeah.
Because our clocks have just changed. I wouldn't have known. I've gone for weeks after the clocks have changed here, not known. And the only reason I know is because I had some difficulty working out what time we were meeting today, so I checked it out. Otherwise, I'd be ignorant for the next month, I'm sure.
We don't change clocks, so I've just got to figure out where everybody else.
But you change clocks as you go across the states. That must be so much more confusing.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's 3 hours difference between myself and Karen, for example.
Oh, goodness, oh my God.
Yeah. So we're big. We're wide.
So yes, what does it stand for?
NSFW literally means not safe for work. It's just something, it's a tag that people tend to use when you post a video, you say NSFW, it means maybe you shouldn't play this on your speakers when you're at work, because there might be something that's, about sex or politics or religion or all of those things that you're not supposed to.
Oh my goodness, work shouldn't be so prurient. Work is just an extension of ordinary life. And it needs to get used to the fact that people are working from home as well now. So this is going to be the new reality. We're going to realize that that a lot of our obsession with working in the office is really from a sort of obsession with the early period of the Industrial Revolution, and so I'm trying to make everything like a factory. And now we're going. I think now we're going to come out of Corona, and we're going to realize actually we can do a lot of this at home. Actually, we can do a lot of this online. I think the whole approach that we're going to take in future to teaching is going to change. We're going to do a lot of that online. And we need to think, well, actually, our teachers are not the source of information. I know that I know far less than most of my students. What I am is an incredibly good mentor and guide. I'm like a sheepdog, so I can bark occasionally, wag my tail, and herd my little my little pupils in the right direction. Towards a library or towards a bank of reference, and they'll be so much better at getting this information than I am. So I think the idea of thinking that we have to go into an office all the time, this is going to change. And so I think
NSFW.
NSFW.
But what it really tells you is, again, this podcast network is a little bit more of the bad boy of the podcasting world. So you can say whatever you want on here. You can say bad words. You can criticize the show. Right, but I'm just saying that's our brand. That's where you are. So
yes. I'm afraid I am sometimes given slightly inappropriate innuendo.
We've seen it, Tim. We have seen your innuendo.
Really? No. Really?
It's funny. You really should go back, I would think, and watch your season, because nobody said anything horrible about him. And it is a game. And I'm saying, I think Tim and I could both tell you that no matter what happens in the game, you stay in the game, you leave it in the game, and you can be friends.
One of the people who really is the master of slightly naughty innuendo is Woody. And I was having a chat with him the other day. Yeah,
so tell us, how is Woody?
Oh, he's just the life and soul of New Zealand at the moment. And he is so happy, and he's got some sheep. So he's sequestered on a farm, and he doesn't know when he's coming back, which is worrying. But he just throws himself into life, and he's one of the things about cats, which all of us, Kim Carrot and myself, we all know this, is cats tend to live in the present tense, and we, as human beings, tend to live in the past tense or in the future tense. We tend not to like thinking about the present. We think about what we did do or what we're going to do. And cats tend not to do that. And it's so useful to anchor ourselves in the present. And Woody is a fellow who's actually much closer to the present than I think I am. He does it naturally. He's only not ignorant of the past or of the future. But he's so good at being in the present, and I felt sort of the moment I met him, there was so much I could learn from him and from his father, from his mother, from his wonderful grandfather, who was also a television personality in the UK, and he made mathematics fun, and mathematics is of course one of the great subjects. I'm useless at it.
I'm terrible. I'm not a mathematician. I'm like Rain Man. I can look at something, I can say it's wrong, but I can't always get from point A to point B to figure out what is wrong with it. So,
but we need to encourage children to realize that all these things are wonderful, and so often when we were small, we're of a generation who were taught that this is the arts and this is the sciences, and they're different. And some people are artists, and some people are scientists, but the sciences are filled with art. And you walk through a building, you're walking through architecture. That's art in 3 dimensions, and you are part of it. And this is mathematics, and it's a beautiful thing. And the Greeks understood this, and somehow, in the process of certainly the last 100 or 200 years, we've sort of lost access to that, and in the same way as we're losing access to the the ancient Greeks and Romans and those amazingly important languages, because ancient Greek and Latin, these give us the structure of certainly English, but also most European languages, and Brazilian, and Portuguese. Obrigado. Which brings us to our subject, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we'll pick back up. So we're starting with the beginning of episode 4. What's happened is that Julia has just been blocked, and she goes to visit Marina.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, this is my favorite part of the circle, right? When they finally get to meet.
Yes.
I just tend to, I just adore this. And so, Tim, I have to ask you then, but but they're more interesting, obviously, if one of the people is a catfish. Right, you can have some wonderful reunions, and I'm thinking of Brooke and Georgina, whatever. Even if nobody is a catfish, but when they are a catfish, obviously there's another layer of it. And so I just have to ask you then, what do you think of Julia's decision to play as a catfish? What do you and in general, what do you think about this idea of playing as somebody else?
As a concept, I don't think it's such a bad idea, and I know the series would have encouraged him because it's actually more fun. So that I think the default position in the series is if you can, you are going to be you are going to be yourself with an embellishment, or you are actually going to be a catfish. And I believe there's a difference between those two. I didn't realize this to start with. I thought anybody who had slightly lied was a catfish, but that apparently is not the case. And almost everybody here in this series is lying to some degree.
They are.
Yeah, they're deeply duplicitous. And what's so fascinating about somebody who's lying in this situation is they then take quite a high and mighty position over anybody else who's lying. And I think, pot, kettle, black. Whoops. Now I had big problems with his name is Rob, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yes. Yeah. Rob played Julia.
I had big problems with Julia-Rob. I liked Rob when I first met him, which was early this morning, by the way. I've crash coursed the entire series to date in one day. And my goodness, it took quite a few chocolate biscuits, actually.
Let's take a step back, even before we talk about catfishing, which I think is an important conversation. I should have asked you this: just give me your overall impression so far of the Brazilian version. What do you think?
I think that will come across. So I think
okay, fine. So
I think maybe I need to squeeze that out slowly.
Okay, so maybe we'll have that. That will become obvious.
But I was going to say, when you were looking at this earlier, did you work out what the sternocleidomastoid muscle was?
No, I mean clearly it's muscle.
It has to be.
It's this bit here, yes.
It's on the side of your neck.
And so it anchors somewhere here, and it goes back up there. And it's sort of the bit which really hurts. So I thought that was fascinating because we weren't told. So I can't remember who it was who asked the question, but it was asked of
Lola. Yeah. And we were told that she's a student of physical therapy.
Yes. And but the boy definitely is not a doctor. And I thought that was one of the funnier moments in the series up to date. Now, what I worried about with Julia-Rob is really what I worried about when I went on the circle, because I thought I thought first of all it was great fun to be a catfish, and maybe I could play a girl. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, well, if I play a younger girl, that's sort of a little bit creepy. Mm-hmm. Or if I play.
Yeah.
Or if I play a younger man and I start making advances or flirting with a younger girl, that's also a little bit creepy. And although, as I say, I liked Rob and I liked what he did with the Julia character, I don't think he went far enough. I suddenly began to think that it was creepy. And it wasn't creepy in a way that was entertaining. And so in the American version, there was a wonderful fellow who wore the most delicious trousers.
Yes.
And he was just so gorgeously, absurdly dressed, and he sort of sent himself up. And he managed to get away with it.
Right.
Although he was doing, in many ways, a lot of what Rob-Julia was doing. But I found the Rob-Julia scenario was extremely worrying, and I was quite relieved when he was blocked. And then when he was blocked, his real personality came out, and he was just as gorgeous as I thought he was. But I don't think it was helped by the costume that the program gave him for the carnival, which was frankly disgusting. And he looked like something out of a very cheap pornographic film.
But could this be again one of these, just because we've discussed in the last episode, just these cultural differences that you pick up when you watch the television that's produced for a different country? It seems that these cultural costumes just seem to be a thing.
I don't know if that's what's culturally acceptable in Brazil. That worries me. I can't believe it is. I just thought they were skimping on the costume budget. The costume for Duma was gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
And he just inhabited that. And the costume for the girl, she just had a little bit on the top. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember who the girl was. She was wearing some green. That looked cool as well. Oh, and the girl Palomino, who played the boy
Lucas.
Right.
Paloma. Her costume was simply bewitching, and she just looked absolutely gorgeous. I mean, Judy Garland, eat your heart out. Though on that subject, I do think that Duma was realizing a lot of Liza Minnelli's natural costume as the series.
I agree.
Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's definitely embracing.
Very classy. One of the things I am going to say, I might as well say it now because it's a tip of my tongue. I might repeat myself, but any second now, I need to stop this little diatribe, and I need to get Kim to talk because I'm taking over.
You're doing great.
But one of the things I thought about him. I thought about Duma. Actually, now I've suddenly forgotten what I was going to say. What was I going to say? I can't remember what I have to come out later. Kim, talk to me.
No, what I was saying, and this was brought up last week, is that there are cultural differences. Have you been to Brazil? I know you're very well traveled.
I've been to Brazil, absolutely. I know it's spelled with an S, not a Z.
Okay.
Obrigado.
Brazil. Yeah. So like
but I've been to the north, so of course the boys will like me.
Well, places like Rio that are very free-spirited, and I think that's kind of what they were bringing into this. So I didn't really look at his outfit as pornographic or anything, but I agree with you 100% that I liked Rob. I really liked Rob.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like Rob as Julia, though.
No, and you see, a lot of this may be due to the editing.
True,
of course.
I just felt it was creepy, and I was really pleased when he went. Actually, I'm horrified. I'm actually saying that because, as I say, I liked him. And I liked him once. I loved that. I love that meeting with Marina because he was just so warm and gorgeous. Yes. Everything I felt about him when he first arrived, but everything that disappeared as he was playing the game as Julia, and he just became flirtatious and creepy and predatory.
Right. And I believe that when anybody who plays, and I understand obviously production, kind of encourages people to play as catfish because that is often considered to be more interesting. But I think it really does hamper your gameplay because
I think it's almost impossible, which is one of the reasons I love James in my series so much, because he managed to sustain it. He didn't sustain it that well. And I always have to tell him that actually I'd worked out he was a catfish quite early on. I just wanted him to I wanted him to play the legend as well as he could. But he was playing a girl with a baby, and
Charlie.
my first thought when I saw him was, and literally I said, I don't think it was aired, which was a great shame, was, oh, mother and child, that's worked well for 2,000 years. And every time I tried to draw him, what I drew was a sort of icon, and I couldn't draw Charlie and Sammy, and that to me was a sort of shorthand of saying that there's something wrong. And and it sort of worked. I couldn't see his eyes. I couldn't see. And then the second photograph he brought out was much the same as the first photograph, and I just thought, this is all a bit sort of, people are bigger than a single story. They've got so many stories to tell, and this is the problem. I think it's very, very difficult to sustain a lie over a period of time, which is why, you know, we take our hat off to people in the Secret Service, I suppose, because they managed to do it. This is why James Bond is so wonderful, except James Bond seems to be himself all the time.
Right.
You know, if you could actually be somebody else, go deep undercover, that's an amazing achievement, and I don't know whether I could do it. My idea in the Circle when I did it was that I was going to be Mrs. May, our Prime Minister, who just been our Prime Minister.
May.
She was a pretty awful Prime Minister. In fact, Shubi and I ought to have a conversation about politics. I'd love to know which political figure Shubi would like to have gone into the Circle as. And I thought about it, and I thought, first of all, there's a practicality. I don't know what it's like to to buy women's clothes and things. So I went shopping to try and find out what it would be like to buy women's clothes, and it was a disaster. I found myself staring at things, looking inadequate, and realizing nothing was in my size as well. But I also realized that Mrs. May as a character was boring, and although I had political feelings about her, I do think she was pretty useless as a leader, and got us into a lot of trouble. But the only thing that I could really think of was that she was asked on one occasion, what have you ever done that was really wild and dangerous? And she said, I remember once running through a field of corn. And I thought, well, there's no fields of corn anywhere in the Circle. I'm stuck in a room. It's going to be very difficult running around the room pretending it's a field of corn. You know, I might produce a loaf of bread by the end of that. I'm not going to sustain myself for 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. She's not that interesting. And then I pleaded to go in as myself, and thankfully the production company was very gracious and let me be myself. And then I think they thought that would be more unbelievable. And I must say that did prove to be the case, because a lot of people have since said to me, "Oh, we thought you were a catfish."
Oh yeah, a lot of people I think might have had a hard time really believing that you were.
Some people thought I was a multiplicity. Some people thought I was more than one person, which was very flattering.
Well, it sounds like you've lived a lot of life for one lifetime, right?
Well, yes. But anyway, so I think Julia Robb was unfortunately a mistake, but it was a mistake I would have made too if I hadn't if I hadn't thought twice. So I understand where he was coming from entirely, and I think it's a salutary lesson, and I think people watching should think very carefully before they catfish online themselves as a different gender. I think it's easier maybe for a girl to pretend to be a boy, and I think Lucas was doing a wonderful job actually, but I think it's much harder for an older man,
right,
to be a younger girl. I just think it's a bit creepy.
Right. So Kim, I'm just going to like jump ahead and ask you then. So what do you think about Lucas though? Do you think that Lucas is doing a good job as a catfish? Because I think I disagree with Professor Tim, and I'd like to hear your take on it.
I think that she's done as good of a job as she can as a catfish for Paloma to be playing Lucas, but I think she low-keyed it. She the Lucas character, the pictures, the character that she's trying to bring out, I think that her own personality is low-key enough, or she was forcing it to be that way, which we find out later in episode 2. Episode 5, that she was low-keying it enough that it didn't match the personality of the photographs. You know, I'd look at that picture and go, okay, surfer dude, he's pretty wild, he's adventurous, he wants to be out there surfing and climbing mountains and biking. Exactly, he's this. And she was bringing him in as like this sensitive kind of guy, and I would never look at that picture and think that. So I think she developed a character that was contrary to the picture.
Right, and also
I think that ultimately got her in trouble.
I think also the fact that she dampened it down a bit is the natural instinct of somebody who is lying, because it's so difficult to be in your face when you are not certain of all the details.
Right, absolutely.
Such a good legend, so well understood, which is why I take my hat off to James and his Charlie Sammy persona, and why I take my hat off to the previous year to the wonderful Alex, who was
Alex.
And he struggled to keep that part going.
Right.
He really struggled. I know him, and you cannot meet a nicer, more sensitive man. And he is such a sweetie. Now Freddie, who simply exaggerated one aspect. And Freddie did something I don't really. Somebody did this in the second series, and I got a bit shirty about it. It was a girl in the second series of the British series where she decided to play it straight, or in Freddie's terminology, he says, "My name's Freddie, and I'm going to play it straight." And he sort of goes up on that word. I don't know why in the VT, but when the girl did it, I felt that was sort of inappropriate. You know, you're starting with two negatives. Women have been persecuted, or at least have been sort of downtrodden for so long. Gay people have been downtrodden for so long. Why would you want to sort of suppress both of those things?
Right.
And you've got the one opportunity to actually sort of show people who you are, and I just felt that was wrong. But Freddie, I mean, whether Freddie wanted to play it straight or not, he was the most flamboyant straight person, I think.
I was going to say, I don't care how hard Freddie was trying to play it straight. Freddie was not straight, and I would not have bought that at all.
I know that whenever I'm feeling a little bit down or a little bit lost, I can call Freddie or get a call from Freddie, and my entire mood changes in an instant.
But I think one of the reasons he was so successful, though, is, again, I mean, he played it straight, but other than that, he was playing as himself, right? His reactions were genuine.
Yes, and he's so, all his emotions are writ large. All his thoughts are. You can see a thought cross his mind, and it's if anybody is made for national television, it is Freddie. He is absolutely designed for that, and it's just so lovely when you can see the process of thought, and so many people want to give you a finished product, a finished polished conclusion, and we're sort of almost taught how to do that. That's not what television is for. Television is for showing us the process, and Freddie just shows us. He sort of allows you into his mind and into his way of thinking. And one of the things I found, I am I allowed to say, redeeming features of the Brazilian circle. It sort of gives you a hint of where I'm going eventually with my analysis of this series. One of the redeeming features, I think, lies not in Duma. That's where I thought it would lie. Because he seems to suppress himself as these 4 to 8 series go on, or maybe the editors have sort of pulled him down a bit because he dominated the first 4 episodes so beautifully. But what I find so extraordinary is the 2 boys, JP and Akal. Is it Akal? It's Akal. I find their fighting detestable. But what's extraordinary is there's a sort of sensitivity in both of them that comes out, and you sort of look. We've got Boy here.
Oh, is that Bay? Or is that...
It's Bay. It's Bay.
Something to say.
Come on. Do you want to see it? Here he is.
Oh, hi, Bay.
He was watching a little bit of it with me too, and then he went back to bed. But he's obviously.
But is Bay a flame point?
No, Bay is a red point.
A red point. Okay.
Yeah. And both Bay's parents were best of breed. So he's really quite special. However, he was the runt of the litter, and I don't think anybody wanted him. So although he's got these rather prestigious parents, he was quite old by the time I got him. And I think he'd been passed from pillar to post.
Oh my gosh!
But he's a special cat. He's very much a special cat. But anyway, look. So what I was saying, what I've been impressed by was just how I could see the thought processes in Akal and also in JP, and I didn't expect it. And that was and that I think is the overriding memory that's going to sit with me for these 4 series, for these 4 episodes. I think I don't know whether you noticed this too.
What exactly?
I noticed it more. I think
the narrative that I know we were supposed to see was that these 2 men were fighting.
Yes.
The narrative that I saw was that there was also a sort of sensitivity and a vulnerability in both of them, which was coming out, and we were seeing that in the process of this conflict. And
I think they're just both bros. They're alpha males, and they were going to conquer, and they were gonna start the fire and bring home the deer to cook on it.
Yes, but I want to urge you to have a look at them again, and for I don't. There's a spoiler coming, but I found Akal's weeping at the end really touching.
Yeah.
And I found JP's sort of indecision at certain points where he was going in for the kill quite moving as well. And these are 2 boys. I sort of went through these 4 episodes. I certainly got to a point where I deeply disliked both of them. And by the time I got to episode 8, I decided I liked both of them enormously. I just wanted to, coronavirus allowing, I just wanted to go up to them both and give them a huge hug. Of course, I would barely have got up to their midriff. They are like to my Frodo.
So I agree with you on that. For Akal, I think I saw more of the sensitivity, but I wonder how much of that had to do with his age, because he's definitely a lot younger than JP.
Is he?
He's 20.
Yeah, he's only 20.
35. Is that right?
I know he's young 30s.
I think I've written it down somewhere. Yeah.
But Akal being quite a bit younger, I have to wonder how much of the sensitivity came because of that. Spoiler alert, but I loved when he. I don't want to jump ahead 2 episodes.
Jump ahead.
I think at this point we are no longer trying to do this chronologically, so please jump away.
Okay, so when he met Lolo, I thought that meeting was very endearing and very
Yes.
heartfelt. I thought it was much more emotionally connecting than I expected it to be.
Oh, much more.
Yeah, because
Are you talking about an in-person meeting?
yes.
Okay, because that is actually kind of outside the scope of what we are supposed to be discussing today.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just saying, if anybody is watching and they have only watched up through the end of episode 8, what happens is we know that JP, Akal, and Lolo are up for elimination, right? And we get 5 minutes of lots of people looking very upset and concerned, and curtain. That is where episode 8 ends.
So I'm afraid both Kim and I have gone on to episode 9.
Well, I cheated also. I just wanted to see what happened.
We couldn't resist.
No.
Oh yeah.
No, that was episode 8. Episode 9 ends with the face-to-face blocking.
Yeah, well, I actually have not watched all the way to the end because, again, I'd like to discuss.
I've only watched the beginning of
just
episode.
Up to the point, right?
Yeah.
But am I right, Kim, that the end of episode 8, I believe, is the cliffhanger, which makes sense because that would be the end of that batch for that week on Netflix.
Maybe we should get back to the beginning of episode 4 because there was another point which I made a note of here. And that brings us into another one of the boys who I think is interesting and misplayed it, and he's Gable.
Yes. What do you think of Gable?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, tell us what you think of Gable.
Well, I think one of the things which seemed very, very noticeable in the American circle was that there was a tension between, were you playing for the camera and the audience at home, or were you playing for the game and the audience of people that you couldn't see?
Right.
And actually, in both the American version and in the Brazilian version, the first person to go off was a model who played in both cases very much for the camera and was a disaster in terms of the actual.
Absolutely.
In both cases, and in both cases it was a great shame because they were brilliant. And of course I immediately got my pen out and started drawing both of them. I couldn't believe that in both cases they were both sort of exiled within the first episode. So so that probably tells us something. But I felt that Gable misunderstood his audience.
Okay.
But it was more complex. It was more complex, and so the personality he put through to the other players was not him. And at one point in this series of I can't remember in which episode it is. At one point he tries to pull back and say, "Oh, actually, I like going to parties and various other things."
Right.
I think he's talking to Akal. And Akal says, so you gave us the wrong profile because you said you're a homeboy. What he was even getting it wrong there.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I agree.
How do you read that, Kim? I actually read it as, I think he was telling us the truth up front, other than, saying that he had a girlfriend. But when he realized he's just not able to break through with these people, then he decided to try to be more of a bro. Well, I like to go to bars, whatever. I didn't believe him, and I thought it was bad.
Does he have a girlfriend?
No, but he claims he does.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Okay. No, I think, I mean, he was very naive. And the person he could really have got on with was Marina, who's also a gamer, I think. And they didn't talk at one point about games. In fact, he never talked about games at any point in any of the conversations. Now, it doesn't mean he wasn't doing so, because we only see the tip of the iceberg in the show. We only really see the point at which the characters are meaningfully and interestingly engaging with each other and taking the stories forward.
Right. But I think Marina even said this at one point in a chat with someone else. Again, I think it might have been with Lola or with the girls with the she fights, that she said, I'm a gamer. It says I'm a gamer, and he just never ever picked up on that. Because I think that if that had happened, we would have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they would have given us the connection,
Right.
because he had no connections. He never connected.
Yeah. So he was so anxious to
really
make contact. He was so anxious to make contact and give content. In fact, he gave a lot of content, but he gave what he thought people wanted to hear rather than who he was. So he wasn't. The big disaster with these programs is if you don't expose your character,
Right.
expose details of your character so that it's sort of interesting to other people, then actually you're not interesting, because nobody's interested in your trying to curry favor, because it's boring. They're all trying to do that.
Right.
What we want to do is sort of read you like a book.
Right.
So you go from chapter to chapter to chapter. So we don't want the whole. We don't want the whole. So we don't need to vomit everything out about yourself in the first moment. But we want a gradual drip, drip, drip of interesting information. And I wasn't aware that this was the case when I was on my program. But I think I was very, very, very lucky that somehow I was restrained from saying too much all at once, because what I came across, as I'm told, was this gradual drip, drip, drip of more improbable things that I might have done, or more improbable things I might have thought. And that this piqued people's interest to the extent that I was possibly thought to be a catfish, but I was generally thought to be interesting. And I don't think Gable got that at any point, which is a great shame. And I just thought, at the beginning of the series, he just goes on about being hydrated.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's terribly important. I cannot imagine that he's a boy who's really very interested in hydration. I know JP. I would have thought he'd be fascinated by hydration, and I'm not surprised that JP and Gable actually got on well together. But
right. Although Gable did say something to JP again towards the end of his run, where it was clear he was in trouble. Then he was saying things like, I'm very much like JP in all sorts of ways. I just never got to show that. Now, if that's true, I would have loved to have seen it.
I would have liked to see it.
But I'm a bit skeptical, because again, it did seem like he was just trying to twist himself into what he wanted him to be, as opposed to just saying, this is me.
And that also, in a way, was the failing of Julia-Rob, that he was trying to appeal to everybody, and in the end coming across as fake.
Right.
I thought, my perception of Gable through the first 4 and then the next 4 episodes, I thought he was kind of chameleon. He wanted to fit in with whatever individual or group he was talking to, and that was not him for a lot of it. But you're right, he literally vomited himself in the first 2 episodes, and then he had no character to develop in talking to these people. Like you said, you had stories, and I think this is something that I see a mistake on a lot of these reality shows, is they're going for the influencers and the pretty young social media influencers that want to get out there and get their modeling career and their acting career started.
Right.
And they're missing the boat, because honestly, they do not have the life experience that somebody who's older and more mature has. Yourself, Tim, with this whole wealth of information and experiences that you can drip out a little bit at a time and make a connection somehow, no matter what it is that somebody says, you can make a connection with it. Karen, you're the same way. If someone says I'm Jewish, you can go, oh my gosh, I'm Jewish too. I spent half my adult life in Israel. Or Tim, you mentioned beforehand that earlier that you actually teach in Russia, right? Okay. My parents lived in Russia for 9 years.
Where?
Yes. They lived in Moscow. They were in the inner circle.
No.
My father
I
was there for a few weeks once.
Yeah.
Oh can I? Am I allowed to tell you that in my last time in my last period in Russia, I was living in the house that Sergei Yesenin used to live in, and Sergei Yesenin is the poet That if you're a little Russian child, is really the first poetry that you learn about a tree. And but Sergei Yesenin, for me, was a fascinating man because he married Isadora Duncan.
Oh, really?
The lady with the scarf who got, you know, oh gosh, that was my hat. Isadora Duncan, you know, person.
You flipped your hat, Tim.
It's a Georgian hat, actually, but it sort of keeps my hair from flopping all over the place. Now there's no barbers. I can't really go and get a cut. I've taken to wearing it almost permanently. But Sergei Yesenin, and the marriage was a disaster. He didn't speak English. She was American. She didn't speak Russian, and they communicated through, I believe, a Hungarian translator called Belzer. And he was drunk most of the time, and more than that, he was also gay. So I don't think this was an ideal recipe for a marriage.
No,
he
doesn't
went back to Russia and killed himself, and she died in a car accident. So really, it wasn't a very happy story, but it was a significant story, and I felt so privileged every time to walk past a sort of monument on the wall. This was this was the house of Sergei Yesenin, and then I'd walk out of there and down a street, and I'd walk past a statue of Prokofiev, and then past the Moscow Arts Theatre and a statue of Chekhov, and I thought, I am in the heart of the sort of, I'm in the artistic heart of Russia. This is the stuff I sort of knew as a child, and I'm so privileged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And see, but you know what? If I was 20 years old, I wouldn't be able to relate to this small snippet of your experiences in Moscow.
I'm so sorry, and I don't want to bore our audience.
No, you're not. But what I'm saying though is, by me bringing that up, I've got some life history. You've got life history. Karen has life history. Someone who's 20 years old does not have a whole lot of life history going on.
Well, although I have to say, Woody somehow was able to do it. I mean, that's the thing. Obviously,
Woody was able to do it, and Woody, and it's not that Woody has so much more life history than anybody else. It's that Woody has this sensitivity to other people's experiences, and he wants to learn about other people, and they want to learn about him. And I've always been fascinated by my students of any age, because they're not me. And
I think Woody was an old soul.
Yes, no, Woody is an exception. But my point was that, I do think with a lot of these shows that just a little bit of seasoning makes all the difference. On Survivor, on Big Brother, there's a huge difference between a 30-year-old and a 22-year-old, I would say.
Except George Galloway was a bore until he started drinking milk from a cat.
Oh, there are plenty of older people who are boring, and there's some younger people who are not. And again, in Woody, like you said, so maybe Woody found another way. Like you said, he doesn't have all the life experience, but he has this natural curiosity. So maybe he couldn't say, "Oh, I've done this." Also, he could say, "Oh, this sounds fascinating. Tell me more." Yeah,
the two things I think about performance that I would be interested in, but particularly this reality performance where you're looking at yourself as a performer, is a sort of rich tapestry of experience that you're interested in, or that you have got, and secondly, an ability to display vulnerability. And one of the things that I think, one of the things that stops that reality TV experience going forward in a positive way is when the vulnerability is sort of clammed up. And I felt with almost all the boys in the Brazilian version of the Circle, maybe it's just a sort of Brazilian machismo, I hope not, that vulnerability was suppressed to an extent where I felt I didn't have access to their souls in a way that I had access to Duma's soul. I had access to the girl's soul in sort of huge dollops. The girls were often wonderful, and the show, I think, is dependent on the girls, particularly Marina.
I love Marina.
She oozes vulnerability, she oozes emotion, she oozes enthusiasm.
Yes.
And that can be placed next to these boys who are often quite wooden. So what I was so relieved of in the show, and what I think is a testimony to the brilliance of the editorial team and the producers, is that they managed to get under that machismo, and they managed to get to see the vulnerability of these amazing boys, because
Right.
all they needed to be teased out a little bit. And even when we first saw Akal, we saw him dancing.
Yes.
And then all that was pulled in, as if sort of the slightest hint of a need to ignite the testosterone sort of represses everything else.
But he was able to be vulnerable. And my issue with JP is, and JP is, playing a very solid game, but the big hole.
But he is a games player. He is a games player, and that, I'm afraid, also detracts from his from his attraction.
I just have never been able to really develop a fondness for him, and I do think it's because, like you said, that he doesn't let us in.
No.
I agree.
Even when he's having a bath, that was one of the stiffest. I use the term very loosely there. One of the stiffest bath scenes I think I've ever seen. I've gone down the wrong route.
Kim, I think you're blushing.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Well, there were two very strange bath scenes that just looked. The bath scene is supposed to look as if people are caught unawares, and then there's a conversation. But the bath scene with Marina and her very noticeable bikini top,
Right.
and the bath scene with JP and his rather dry shorts.
Yes.
I just thought, I don't understand what was being planned there. And then in contrast, you had the bath scene with Rob, which was sort of almost as grim as his carnival costume. Poor Rob. I don't know why he even agreed to do all this, because he was very much a fall guy in the grander design.
Although I do believe that, again, that if he had not tried to catfish, because, again, going back to Julia and your discussion, it's true that she was just doing, everything was flirting. She had two things. She had anti and she had flirting.
Him. I would have liked him.
I would have loved him.
I could have had him in the bath then as well. It doesn't matter. It just, as a girl, and this sort of flirtatious thing, I just thought, ugh. It was like looking. It was like looking at a piece of bacon that's been left out too long. It was just unattractive.
Right.
Unattractive.
But this whole thing, but I'm glad that this is one of the points I did want to bring up, is that what do you think, same thing?
Well, I did want to bring it all up, actually. Sorry.
But all of the coupling up, right? Obviously, we have Marina and Lucas, we have Lolo and Akal, we have JP and everybody else.
JP and everybody.
Right.
Everybody, absolutely everybody. Yeah.
Right. And we also had this in the, and also in
like
the
a girl, he's after it.
But in the US season, it was the same thing. Maybe not as bad as this, but same thing. Lots and lots and lots of flirting. Whereas in the UK seasons, we saw a bit of that, but much less.
Yes.
And why do you think that is?
Yeah, we didn't see as much games play in the UK seasons. I think. You see, what I don't understand, what I think is maybe, you see, I don't know enough about reality TV, and I'm so longing to learn from the masters. So I bow to your wisdom and your knowledge, and I will come running to you for help and instruction, because I find it such a fascinating phenomenon. A little, when it's bad, it's a little bit like paying your money to go and watch the insane people in Bedlam.
Right.
When it's good, it's like free theatre at its very best, and it's natural, and it's like a glimpse into the soul that you can never have in theatre as such. Or in food. It's pure reality. But so often, I think it tends towards the sort of bedlam experience.
Oh, absolutely. But the point is that there are these little gems that aren't like that, and it really are like. And you've just encapsulated perfectly why I love reality TV.
Yeah,
because I would much rather watch real people, right?
Yeah,
than,
absolutely. That's the point, because actors are trying to do what these real people actually do, and so at its best,
right,
the producers and the editors manage to find those kernels of beautiful reality, and then script a narrative around that, which is incredibly watchable. And when it works, that works. Now, the problem that I found for the American version, and the problem that I think is even more noticeable in the Brazilian version, is that people are so used to this that they're playing the game rather than the reality. And somehow in the British version, it may have been so much more so with me because I'm such a sort of virgin reality person, so I wasn't aware of the games that could be played. But in the British version, we did seem to be involved in creating the sort of the reality circle rather than the game. And I was incredibly possessive of my circle, and anybody who got in the way of my circle and my idea of reciprocity and friendship, and I think this is something that's sort of overlooked in both the American version and the Brazilian version. What is the circle? And I think somehow I would like to see the presenter sort of edging into the show a little bit more to correct that. If necessary, even going into their rooms and saying, hey, come on, you are part of the circle. You're not trying to win. But
I do wonder whether that the production has kind of leaned in that direction in the US. And again, I know a lot less about Brazil, but certainly in the US, there's this just idea about, sex sells. Right. So even though in the UK, we got people of all different ages and abilities and everything else, in the US, we basically get a bunch of young, hot people because that's what sells. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's not, I enjoyed the US version, but not to the same extent.
It was not as watchable as the British version, I think. Though, as I said, I only watched 4 episodes, but I am told it was very watchable. Certainly the first series was very watchable.
Yes.
And I did watch the whole of the first series. The second series is spoiled for me by having me in it. But because I know what I was doing. I remember all these things, and I remember so much more than one can actually see. And I get I can't really follow the story because I'm in it. I'm not saying I don't like watching myself on television. Please put me on television, and I will be bewitched. But I love a little bit of me. But I just feel that somehow they've lost the story. They've lost what the story should be. And a certain innocence about the circle, and if you throw yourself into that, the studio and the producers and the and all the sort of machinery that makes that will make you work better. And I think
so. What's the difference?
That grabbing to win, in the end, comes across as ugly.
I think. Kim, I don't know what you think about this, but I tend to believe you're going to agree with this, that 90% of all of these reality shows it's all about the casting, right? If you get the right cast, it can work. It doesn't always work, but it's certainly much more likely. If you get the wrong cast, then it doesn't work. And I think in the US, again, they were just looking for different kinds of people, and even just the kind of gameplay. And this is coming up again in Brazil, that all we're seeing is people flirting with each other. And so my question to you is this a legitimate way to play? If you are Lolo, or if you are Akal, or if you are Marina, is it good gameplay to team up with somebody? Or is that kind of stifling the gameplay?
You know what? I agree with you 100% that the casting process is the key to making the show. For example, I don't think Woody would have been quite as intriguing And I loved Woody. If we didn't have a Tim, somebody for him to look to pick your brain and talk to you and connect with. I don't know that Tim would have been nearly as intriguing without the connections that you made. So when I look at The Circle as more of a social show as opposed to a competition show.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that the US version and the Brazilian version are looking to make it competitive, similar to Survivor or Big Brother or The Challenger, something like that.
Can I ask you, Kim, when you were in your program, did you find a pressure on you to flirt with other team members and to sort of play that sort of card, or did you resist?
Not for me, because I'm almost 60 years old. The oldest person on my show was 36 outside of me. So for me to flirt with them would have been, pretty creepy.
So what role did you find yourself? So you found yourself playing a maternal role then, in other words?
No, she didn't play maternal. Let her explain, because
I would
play maternal.
I was not maternal at all, which is weird.
I'm longing to see this. I'm longing to see this, Kim. Now that I've met you, I'm longing to see what you did.
Tim, I'll send you the links. I would. Okay, so Sequester is definitely a competitive show.
Yes.
I know that I don't have the physical attributes to beat 22 and 23-year-old males and things like that. That's not where it's going to go. But I've got the mental capacity to beat them. And so I had to depend on mental competitions. And in between time, 100% social. And as I was saying earlier, I literally made a connection with every single person that I played with. And I had to make that connection strong enough that they did not want to get rid of me. Right. And again, this goes back to the life experience and living various places and working various jobs. And if nothing else, the art of connecting, people like to talk about themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
So if I didn't have something that stood out where I went, oh yeah, you know what? I remember being a kid and driving through Saskatchewan, Canada, and seeing the mustard fields and making that connection with someone from Saskatchewan. I could at least say, tell me about Saskatchewan. I've never been there. I've heard it's beautiful. Tell me about it.
Now,
and people talk about themselves. People love to talk about where they're from in their life. And that's how you have to make that connection. I'm not seeing that.
I think Raf has
let's talk about Raf. What do you think? What do we think?
I think Raf has been given exactly this advice. I think he does it appallingly, and he's another person who irritates me. And in fact, during his episode, he comes in episode 7, doesn't he?
I think so. Yes.
Episode 7, and then he goes through into episode 8. I had a little sleep, and I realized he had actually sent me to sleep because he was very calculating. He's very interesting in a way.
Oh yeah, no, this is our villain. This is our unapologetic villain, which is something that I often love. But this guy is not doing it for me.
Yes, but he doesn't make good television, and he's not a James.
No.
You know, he's not a sort of twirling moustache. He wants you to like him at the same time as be a villain. You can't do the two jobs.
No.
And it's very difficult to be a villain in a reality TV. And so everybody I know who's done it has had a tough time because people think that's who you are.
Right.
But you are in fact playing an element of yourself, and you're allowing one element of yourself to dominate, and it's very necessary because it then makes some other. It gives something for other people to bounce off. I'm immensely indebted to James in my version of The Circle, because without James, I couldn't have progressed. And I didn't know he was a villain, but
he was.
he gave me everything, really. And also the other thing about James was his vulnerability always came through to me. and
Right.
people don't fully understand that. But every time we spoke, there was an element of his character which just seeped out, and we connected at an incredibly deep level.
Right.
And I just ignored all the sort of manipulations, which I saw going on, and I was quite cross with him at times. But without that, there would have been no drama.
Right.
So we need a Raf, but he's not doing the job well. And he's and actually what he's coming across as is smug.
Yes, that's the perfect word for it.
And I was very interested because when I was thinking, because I was in the circle very, very fast, and I didn't have a lot of time to think about it, but I did think there's a difference between talking to your other contestants and talking to the camera.
Right.
And Raf has clearly taken this to heart, because he'll say one thing to the contestants, and then he'll turn around and say, "Well, I don't mean that."
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And the fact that he does that so repetitively starts to become boring, and start to resent that.
Right. See, I feel like he is basically trying to twirl his mustache, and again, that can be very amusing if it's done well. Yeah. But it's not. I'm not responding to that, and like you said, and he's not giving me any of the vulnerability or any other side of him the way that James did. So I'm just not able. It's him and JP. Like I said, I want to like them. I just have not found any way to connect with them.
I think he was. I think he was sort of pushed into the show, really, to supplant Duma, who does the job rather better. And I can't. It's in these episodes where he goes on some crusade against everybody. It isn't. Oh, is it in the first 4?
No, there's more Duma in the first 4.
Yeah,
Duma did do something though in this batch of episodes that I want you to be aware of. Because I think it's an homage to you. Did you see where Duma was in the weight room and he's running on the treadmill in his little sequin shorts?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That might.
That's a homage to me.
Yes, running on a treadmill in a 3-piece suit.
Oh yes, it's true, and I fell over as well.
I know we saw. So I don't know. I have not been able to connect with Duma. I would love to, and I would just love to ask him: is that something he did deliberately? Because Duma has watched these other seasons. It's clear to me.
Do you think so?
I think so. What do you think, Kim?
What I was going to say was Raf.
Right. We'll get to Ray. There's Ray and there's Raf. Yeah.
Raf says at one point he's a queen or something. But no, I can't remember what I was going to say. I was going to say let's go over to Duma.
Right.
Because I'm sort of interested. I found that when Duma in these 4 episodes, when Duma is not as evident, the episodes are significantly more boring.
Absolutely.
And as I say, they actually sent me to sleep at one point. And I mean, that's fairly usual, by the way. I have slept all the way through Rambo, and after I came out of the circle, I had to go to one of these red carpet do's for one of the most detestable films I think I've ever seen, called Medway or something. It was about the battle in America, and I went to sleep within about 5 minutes, and I woke up just after the end. And I was sitting next to a journalist who asked me if I enjoyed it, and I said it sent me to another world. It was one of the most boring experiences. I just worry about sleeping in the cinema next to sort of people like journalists or famous people. After you get past a certain age, you can't do it discreetly, and you start to make noises, not always from the front. And it's sort of disturbing, and I think I am going to get caught out in time. But anyway, yes. The lack of Duma in these 4 episodes, I think, was a critical failure. And I think Netflix needs to look at its viewing record, and I think it will find that that without Duma, its viewing figures have gone down.
Mhm.
It wouldn't surprise me at all, because he, I think what I'm concerned about, because I haven't watched the last 4 episodes yet, but my concern is that they built him up in this character development
Mhm.
and then hit a ledge, hit a cliff, and dropped off.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, when I watch the last 4 episodes, to see if they reclimb that cliff, you know,
Yes,
or
well,
reclimb that mountain.
If you'll have me back next week, I'd be very happy to watch the next 4 episodes. But if you wouldn't have me back, there is no way on hell's earth that I would actually watch this rubbish again, because I'm bored actually with the second set of 4 episodes. It hasn't sustained my interest.
And the US version had the same problem, right? It
Yeah.
was great the
Yeah,
first
the
few
US
episodes,
version
then it
did.
had a lag, and then in the end it picked up again. So there's something about probably the way they're editing it. I don't know.
It could be.
I think something about the way they're casting it, and it's something about the way that this is a very peculiar series, and it's very much tailored to people who get that idea. And so you're right. You either want to oppose the idea of the circle. No, actually, you don't want to oppose the idea of the circle. You see, James and Paddy and Georgina developed their own circle.
Absolutely.
In defiance of the circle that we were in. Ella, Woody, and myself were in the circle.
Right.
Brooke was in the circle at the beginning of that circle, and in the previous episode, the previous series, there was very much a sense of the circle. I think it was more intensely felt in the series I was in, and I think without that it doesn't work.
Right.
Because there is no. Because there is no community, you don't have that sense of Big Brother. I don't. In Sequester, did you meet your other contestants, or were you isolated as well?
No, I met them after during the show. Did not know. I knew a couple of them, or knew of them beforehand.
So did you meet them face to face?
Yeah, the game was played face to face in 5 days, Kim? Something like that?
It's literally an entire season in 5 days. It's similar to Big Brother in that we lived in the same house. There was a jury, and they were sequestered and things like that.
I see. So the circle is really quite peculiar. So if you can't,
right,
if you can't create this sense of community,
correct,
then actually the program, I think, falls to pieces. And I think the US program just about held together because there was because of Seaburn, who is just a gorgeous man.
Yes.
Shuby, who is I just want to take him home. And
really,
we adore Shuby.
And there was somebody else on the series. The lovely lady. I can't remember what her name was now. She got blocked quite early on. But there were so many people.
Miranda.
I can't remember what her name was. She goes on the internet as the unknown, or the
Karen.
Karen, yes.
Karen is wonderful.
Mercedes. Karen / Mercedes.
Yes, Mercedes. That's it. And there were characters in the and Sammy. There were characters in the American circle who were not quite creating that sense of community in the same way that I think we're doing in the UK. But they were getting close to that. But in the Brazilian thing, where you would expect that sense of community to be absolutely integral, it's just not there. So I long for scenes where we've got the twins together. Because they sort of inhabit the circle. They are there, but they are, as you get to the end of this set of 4 episodes, they're as vicious as everybody else.
See, and I think that's the problem, Tim. You guys, for season 2 UK, there were legitimate connections while you were playing the circle. There were legitimate connections, and as a viewer, we've seen those connections outside of the circle. Once the season wrapped up and everything, just in pictures and stories and things like that. Whereas-
increasingly, although I admire some of the people, and although I think there was a point at which I think I think the two worst offenders were redeemed.
Right.
I was getting to the point where I just don't like these people, and I have to say that quite bluntly.
Yes.
I just I don't like them. I don't care about them, and it took me a lot of effort to keep watching. And I think if I were a normal punter, I probably would have switched off. Unless people in Brazil are so used to this sort of thing, they think this is what they're paying for.
Right. But look at how nasty social media gets, Tim. You're in there. You're on.
And I've only just discovered social media, and I don't like the nastiness.
There is nastiness, and I think that's a piece of what we're seeing in the Circle Brazil, and that we saw in the Circle US. Is they've extended that.
We have to fight against that, particularly now with coronavirus.
Right.
This is not the message. This is not the image that television and social media need to be putting forward. The image that we need to be putting forward is this great big hug that we're all, come with us, come into this wonderful world of the Circle.
Right. And you could still be and there's still competition, right? The people in your season were playing to win, but there was just something I almost want to say was almost wholesome. Right.
The worst thing in my version of the Circle was a television celebrity who came in called Richard May, and he was vicious to me, and he reduced me to tears. You didn't see that little bit because it was nicely edited out, but he was told to make himself unpopular. He did. He was very nasty about my cat, but he would never have known how unpleasant he was or how badly that affected me, and I don't think he was told. We were up for a national television award, and he came up to me, and I met him, and he came up to me immediately and gave me the most enormous hug, and then introduced me to his wife, who was the real Judy, and she gave me a hug as well, and I thought it was so lovely.
Right, but that was the worst part of your, and that was nasty, but it was part of the game that he was told, make yourself unpopular.
I feel that spirit runs all the way through the Brazilian version of the Circle, and I feel that was a mistake in the British production, and I feel it's a mistake in the Brazilian production. I feel it was a mistake when it sort of emerged in the American production, and I feel the Circle itself as a concept, Tim Harcourt's wonderful invention, is something that we actually need at the moment, because so many of us are literally in self-isolation. We are literally in our version of the Circle, and
absolutely
we want to see how it's done. And it's not done by being horrible to one another. It's done by reaching out sort of almost psychically. What was extraordinary in the British version, and what doesn't come across at all as even suggested in the American version or the Brazilian version, actually it does come across in the American version between Shuby and
Joey,
I think. There's
Joey
and Joey, yes, and Joey.
I love.
You cannot speak quietly. Hello, I'm whispering.
I loved Joey from the start. I know I was exceptional.
I'd forgotten Joey's name, but Joey is just. We all wanted Joey in our life. And Joey was a bit of a games player, but his natural warmth just came across all the time. He couldn't not be warm and gorgeous. And the same thing with Shuby, and the same thing with Seben. They just couldn't. And to a certain extent with Sammy, and certainly Mercedes, they could not but be warm. And I feel this is a pattern, and Tim's creation allows that to manifest. And I found when I was in the Circle that I had this sort of psychic connection with people who liked me or didn't like me or wanted me down or not. I had a psychic connection with James, with Paddy, with Georgina, certainly Brooke, definitely with Woody. I remember on one occasion I was trying to communicate something to Woody, and without betraying somebody else's confidence, and he suddenly says, "Oh, I got goosebumps," and I knew he understood. And And I didn't need to say anything more because he understood. And afterwards, I said to him, "Did you understand it?" He said, "Absolutely. The moment you said it, I understood." And I feel that's a communication. That's a form of communication which, the longer we are in isolation, the more we are going to have with our friends, neighbors, and indeed with people who we don't like. We're going to have this ability to connect with people in a non-verbal way.
Right.
And I don't think that the Brazilian version of The Circle so far, and I hope it changes in the next 4 episodes. And if you will have me back, I will watch those 4 episodes, and that might do me good. But I don't feel so far that that's been in evidence. I think that's a failure of the series so far. And I find that it may simply be because I'm watching it in subtitles, by the way.
Yeah, I was wondering, right, does that, because I've been trying to give it every chance. And so that's the question is it a cultural issue? Is it the subtitles? And I think that's a bit of it.
I don't think,
but I think
yeah. You don't think so, Kim?
I don't think so. I don't think that's a part of it because I've gone back and watched every episode twice. Once where I'm reading the subtitles and now I know what's going on. And then the second time I'm reading it, I'm watching facial expressions and mannerisms and how they are reacting to each other versus playing to the camera. And so me watching it with other shows, with your show, with Big Brother, with whatever the case may be, I want somebody to root for. I want to be able to pick my winner and root them on to the end and be thrilled when they win it, or be thrilled when they get that fan favorite in your case, or something along those lines.
You don't feel there is anybody yet?
I don't. We're 8 episodes in, and I do not have that connection where I am rooting for any one of them to win.
There's a lot of eye candy, though, isn't there?
So yeah, but I can watch, what is it, X on the Beach or something if I want eye candy.
Right.
I'm watching The Circle because I want to see a strategic interaction game where they're literally not seeing each other until somebody leaves and goes home.
And I also want to see something.
You know, that's what I'm watching it for. I watch Survivor because I know they're going to have brutal challenges and, you know, voting people out and blindsides and backstabbing. I know that's going to happen in Survivor, but they're only there 39 days. I know that watching Big Brother, I've got 100 days of that to watch. And I'm watching for a combination of the two, the social interaction, but also the livability. And over 100 days, even if I don't know them personally, but you get to know these people. And ultimately, there's like 3 seasons of Big Brother that I really, really did not like. Like I almost quit watching it because I never had anybody to root for.
I started watching Love Island because somebody suggested I should. And I'm afraid I managed, I think, 4 or 5 episodes. And I finally gave up shortly after Ollie got thrown out. And I just realized, I just thought, I don't like any of these people. I had met some of them by this point.
Right.
I'd met some of them in the television awards, and they seem very sweet in real life, but a bit sort of, some of them, I thought they would be more vapid than they were. Some of them actually had some depth to them.
Right.
I was surprised. But on television, they were so mindless.
Exactly. You want substance.
Why is this, and why are these why is this program commanding such affection? Do people not have pornography? Sorry. I just don't understand. Why do we have these mindless conversations?
Because I believe that, again, and I also wonder whether any of it, no, it's not even just being British, because the same issue, I'm assuming, is on some of these similar British TV shows. Again, you have seen.
That's what I want to find out.
I'm afraid that one of the things I think you're going to find out if you sit down and watch a lot of reality TV show is that most of it is not very good, right? Most of it it's a combination of hot bodies and people fighting. You know, there are exceptions, and again, you were introduced to reality TV, I feel like, on a show that is very unusual. Right. And that's why I love it so much. Right.
Yes.
And if you just start watching kind of random, you know, reality shows or even shows that are very popular, I think you're going to be disappointed by most of them.
So what we have to do is to try and, well, so hope that we can ensure that the circle doesn't descend into one of these, that we can keep the circle at the top of its game.
I think people need to remember the name of the game. The name of the show is The Circle. Circle is connected. It's never ending. It's one piece, whether it's 4 people in the circle or 12 people in the circle, it's all connected.
And you cannot win on your own. You cannot win by taking out your adversaries.
Right. No, and I do think also, again, most of it is casting. You know, it's about, you know, what are they looking for and what are they casting? Mm-hmm. And again, one of the things that makes me so upset about the US and the Brazilian versions is that when I discovered The Circle, one of the things I loved about it, I said, this is a game I can play, right? I am middle-aged. I am, you know, not in fantastic shape. I have a disability. And this is a game that, you know, I could never play Survivor. I don't even know if I'd pass medical for Big Brother, right? But this is something I could do. And in the UK, they harnessed that so beautifully with you and Patty and, you know, and all the other people. And it just seems like in the other markets, they have just decided, oh, you know, we just need hot bodies and they just need to flirt. And that's how we're going to get ratings. And I really hope that they will take a step back and take a look at the original 2 seasons.
Well, I think part of that, I think a piece of that is the fact that The Circle UK was on television, whereas US and Brazil are on Netflix.
Yes,
and
that's a big difference, by the way.
Your demographic in Netflix is way different than your demographic on television.
Interesting. You mean younger? You think it's skews younger?
The streamers? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But you're also watching it differently.
Correct.
And
what do you think about this release schedule, Tim? I mean, you know, we hate it. I mean, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, that they are releasing 4 episodes every Wednesday.
Yes, I find it really tough watching 4 episodes at a time. Today I watched 9, and I think that was a little bit of overkill.
Yeah. Exactly, I agree.
If I come across as jaded, it may simply be because I've watched 9 back to back. I'm terribly sorry.
But but
there's got to be jaded
about 8 back to back, Kim, twice. Yeah. You've watched 16. I salute you.
Yeah. You know what? My big thing though was I love the anticipation of the program itself. So in yours, the anticipation of, oh my gosh, here comes the live episode, and you know, all of that. I don't have any anticipation in these because, oh my gosh, I got to the end of the first one. It automatically pops up and says, and goes into the next episode.
Well, I was excited, I'm afraid, to go from episode 8 to episode 9 because I did want to see that next moment.
Yes.
So the end of episode 8 was in many ways rather brilliant.
Yes, they do that. They do the cliffhanger at the end of the 4 episode batch, right, to try to get you to come back next week. But I so much prefer the UK version where there was an episode almost every day.
Yeah,
but they came out daily, and you just have to kind of keep coming back. Yeah, I understand they sold this to Netflix, but even on Netflix, they don't necessarily have to stick to this release schedule, and I haven't heard anybody really defend it. No, so I'm hoping that maybe for France it will change, but I'm not terribly optimistic.
Well, the French one is in about a month or so, isn't it?
It's starting April 9th, I believe.
You see, like 2 weeks.
Also on Netflix. Again, I don't know in the UK.
I just hope the French one is better than the Brazilian and the American one, because at this particular time, I think if we could have the Circle in its original form, as it was originally intended to be, it would be such a healthy thing to be broadcast.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I would love to see a Circle International where they've got a French and an American and a Canadian and a Brazilian and a UK, because I think that I think people would ask each other more questions.
Also,
And
we wouldn't have to have people speaking the same language, would we?
No, there's
No.
got to be
It
a way.
translated simultaneously because it wouldn't matter.
they're
You know,
typing it. There's someone from production typing it in anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Type it in the native language.
Kim, it happens magically, I can tell you. There is no one from production. It's like God, you see.
I know, right? There's no assistant that's sitting there typing everything you say.
As God is typing into that screen.
No, I
and
did occasionally have to correct the spelling, and when I lapsed into Greek, I think God wasn't quite good enough.
Tim, I can just see you're hearing, Tim, please speak English.
Yes, if I'd gone into Ivrit or biblical Hebrew, I think I would have had to tell them to start from the other side, which would be very.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna speak biblical Hebrew now, so I do need for you to type in from right to left.
Yes, exactly.
No, and I'm just thinking, especially All Stars, right? After they've done a few more of these episodes, all of these seasons, right? Take everybody back to that building and do an All Star for.
But we would all then have to be,
because they actually have the rights, right? In most shows, we've all talked about with Survivor. We would love to see Survivor Australia versus South Africa versus the U.S., but it'll never happen because they're owned by different companies. Whereas in this case,
they're all owned. They all come from the same studio, and in fact, many of them so far they've all been filmed in the same place.
Yeah,
what's fascinating? I saw my room.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's in your apartment?
Yeah, it was being used by Raf and by who was it now? Rob.
That's
Rob did?
We're both in my bed. So I found that rather entertaining.
All right. I'm just looking, given the time, I mean, there is so much more that we could talk about.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Why don't you take control and fire some questions at us, and then we will because I'm looking at things here and I'm thinking there was this wonderful thing here I got down here where Lucas advised. In fact, she wasn't the only person to advise that catfishing was not the purpose of the game.
Yes, and I agree. I mean, what do you think? Right, that it's not. And Kim and I said this last week. This is not Hunt the Catfish, right? They're playing the wrong game, and I was so happy to hear Paloma tell them stop playing that game. Yeah. Right, and just decide on you, and it's a decision that you made with James, right? You were skeptical, but you just decided that he was still an ally, and if Sammy wasn't Sammy, who cares? Right.
Yeah, absolutely, and I wanted to find out more about Sammy and about Charlie and this whole story. And in fact, James said he was getting quite angry with me asking these questions.
But were you doing that to try?
He thought I was trying to catch him out.
Right. Well, that was my question. Because I assumed that's what you were doing. You're saying
no. I wanted this legend to be developed because I thought it was such an interesting legend, and I would like it to have been true. But it didn't mean I wasn't aware. Willing suspension of disbelief, the basis of all fiction. But there was in these 4 episodes the best line in the show so far.
Yeah. Which one? And
it was Duma's, and it was it was his line about being bi-curious. That sounds like a bird.
Oh, right.
Wasn't that wonderful?
Duma is a soundbite machine.
No, but he didn't call it bi-curious. He said be curious, right? With that wonderful pronunciation. And he's right. It did sound like a bird. And he was so dismissive of it. Really, I think I think basically he was taking the view that if you can't make up your mind, it's not really very interesting. I think he can be very censorious, which is funny. But I would love to see more of that character coming out. But of course he comes to the point where he's so censorious and so dismissive of other people that he runs the risk of being blocked immediately. But there was one point where he was sitting there looking rather like a disapproving Miss Marple, or a little bit like the Dowager Duchess of Downton. I mean, he was realizing his own Maggie Smith.
He was channeling Maggie Smith.
What is a weekend? I can't remember what point he was. I'm not sure of the scene, but there was but he was superb. He was superb at that point, and that was in episode 7. That was the episode where I started to go to sleep. And then there was the Brilliant Minds game, which just bored me stiff.
Yeah, I was going to say, even a lot of these things, and the first time we kind of went through all the games, and a lot of it, there's just not that much to talk about with most of these conversations.
I also thought the painting was the painting.
I did want to ask you this. So you did the painting in your season, correct? But it was not anonymous? It was not anonymous, correct?
No, it was not anonymous. No.
Right.
We had to share our painting. I can't remember. I don't think it was anonymous. I think it was anonymose. Then we had to claim it because they made a great fuss about my painting. When they said we had to paint, I think we were given half an hour to paint, and I thought, oh my God, I've been drawing everybody, and the one person I can't draw, and I think I made some comment about this was Beth, who wasn't Beth anyway.
Right. Choice. Right.
And they made me paint Beth, and I thought, this is the one person I can't draw, but I sort of managed something, but she had no character.
Right.
When she became Joyce with Jake, she became adorable. The two of them together were just gorgeous, and I've met them since, and I like them both, and I thought they realized something as Joyce, but as herself, pretending to be that catfish, she was just dull. But all the paintings were sort of grim and dark, and they got darker and darker and darker. And the one painted by the two boys, and the two boys otherwise so gorgeous, the twins. Right. The one painted by the two boys, which I think was of Marina. I mean, it looked as if it had been painted in ordure. It was it was disturbing as a painting, and there was his leg sticking up, and it just looked worrying, and it was cruel, and so many of those paintings were cruel, and I think that's not the meaning of the show.
Right. I was going to say, I think you've hit on it, that there is a certain amount of, competition or, that we expect and that we want. And then there is a point where it crosses that line and it just stops being fun to watch. And I'm not sure for me that we're quite there, but with certain characters, I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there.
I was relatively shocked at the painting of Lola with where it had the rose. So initially I'm looking at
the rose and the thorns.
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's got the flower. And then I'm looking at it going, wait, are those hearts going through hearts?
Right.
Yeah, who painted it?
I've got that. I just got to find it.
I haven't got it. I
think that was Duma, but I could be wrong.
Really, because
because they didn't make it. They didn't initially make it 100% clear on who had painted certain of them.
Right.
The painting of Duma was the painting of Duma himself was very nice, but apparently it was supposed to be nasty, and I couldn't work that one out either. The painting of JP was lovely. It's very sweet. It's very
Some of them were lovely.
Firefighter.
And then it suddenly took a dark turn, and all of them were nasty. And that one of the rows was it was hideous.
The thorns going through the hearts, and I was like, oh my God, what kind of sick, demented mind is doing this?
Then there was one that I think JP painted of the person with the devil's sheep. What was that? Who was that? That was of Akal.
Akal with the leash and collar.
Yeah. That was that one. I thought that one was devil. Right.
Just horrible, and it looked like sort of it looked satanic.
It did, and I was thinking, I'm watching this, thinking, Wait, this is the perception you have of these people from nothing more than the written word, their profile, and a photo.
Yeah. And it's not that's not true. These people, they're trying to do each other down, and that's not the game. And
Exactly.
It gave me I have to say it gave me pain. This is why I didn't want to answer your question at the beginning, Karen, when you said what did you think of the program, and I said please let's go through this, and I would eventually, I'm afraid, confess.
Right.
I come very, if I didn't have a vested interest in the circle, I would say, and this was the first time I'd come across it, I would say I hated it. I have a vested interest in the circle. I can see what it should be, and I can see how fond I am of it, and how much I would like it to succeed, and I hope it redeems itself in the next 4 episodes. And actually, please do have me back next week, and I will promise to watch the next 4 episodes, and I will promise to I will do everything I can to say it redeems itself. So anybody who's watching, note, it will redeem itself in the next 4 episodes. So please persist with me. Watch it with me, please.
Like I said, for me, I do like some of these people, Kim. There's nobody that I'm falling in love with like I have on other seasons.
But we're all going to fall in love with them by next week. We're all going to fall in love with them, and I'm sure in real life they are lovely, and I've got my list of people I want to get in touch with, and I will, and I have done some drawings, and I only draw people I like. So there were points in these episodes where I clearly thought I could like these people.
Oh no, everything I say is about the edited character that we are seeing on a TV show. It says nothing about the actual person. I'm surprised if I meet them, and I will love every one of these people. What I am seeing on the TV show right now,
what we've seen on the TV show is not attractive, and particularly episodes 7 and 8 are just horrible.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Hopefully it will redeem itself, but I think this might be a good time to wrap it up.
I'm so sorry, we're wrapping it up on such a negative point. Please, Kim.
Hold on.
Kim wants to say something.
You've gone away.
Okay, I assume she's coming back. All right. So while we are waiting on Kim, I guess this might be a good time. Tim, why don't you tell people where they can follow you on social media?
Oh, how lovely.
Oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
I told you I would bring Duncan out. He was sleeping, so I woke him up.
Gorgeous. Duncan.
Hi, Duncan.
Hello.
Duncan looks like he'd like to go back to bed.
And Duncan is 7, is that right?
Yeah, he's 7.
It's a very biblical number. He's doing it as really boring. How lovely. Well, me on social media. Oh, yeah, I'm a social media virgin, but I've actually managed to upload my first video on my own today.
Oh, awesome.
So on Instagram, I'm Professor_Tim_Wilson.
Right.
On Twitter, I think I'm something similar. Oh God, what am I on Twitter?
I think you're PROF_Tim_Wilson.
There we are. You know better than me. On YouTube, I take my partner's name. I'm Zontul Films Limited. That's ZONTULFILMS_LTD.com, isn't it? Is there a .com? No, there's not a .com.
No, not on YouTube. No, it's just.
And then is that it? It's extraordinary. When I came out of the circle, I was so trusting of everybody. There was an incredibly leggy blonde Ukrainian lady outside King's Cross station. I don't think she was a prostitute, but I know that is where people came up to me. She said, "Oh, you are Tim," and I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Can I have your telephone number?" And I gave it to her. And, I then told
you're so naive.
I then told people, and they said, "You shouldn't have done that." And I thought, no, I really shouldn't have done that. I don't know why I did it.
Well, you know why, Tim? Because quite frankly, most people are good people. Most people are not going to cause problems. But yeah, in the future, maybe you might want to give I mean, even when you sent me Tim, you also sent me his phone number, quite early in our chatting on Instagram. I was like, maybe he should stop giving his phone number to people he doesn't know.
Yes. I didn't meet you outside King's Cross Station, so it's
right. So at least there's that.
it was all
Have I done all my social media there? Have I covered? And I'm getting a new website, which I think is Prof Tim Wilson, but I think it's all one word. And but if I'm coming back next week, we can confirm that.
Okay, absolutely.
And that's being made for me at the moment, and they wanted a piece of animation. So I've done a drawing of my face, which sort of appears and just you can now see him. And you need your own drawing to appear and disappear. And I make sure that I do a little video every Sunday called Sunday with Tim. And today I've done a little bit with a film that I've been making for about 5 years, which is about you would call it vaudeville, and I call it music hall. And I'm really excited by the whole tradition of the sort of 19th century, early 20th century popular entertainment, which really then becomes reality TV. I'm really interested in what I think sort of in a sort of academic way we'd call the ephemeral, the stuff we throw away. But that is the stuff that makes up our life, isn't it? That's the stuff that dominates our life, the stuff we throw away, the stuff we don't think is important. That unimportant stuff is the tapestry of our existence. And so I love the music hall, and I've been making little films for YouTube about it, and I've been animating. So the songs that people used to sing, I just sing them, and in fact I don't have a piano with me while I'm doing it, but I put the piano on afterwards, and oddly I'm in key most of the time, which is quite nice. But then I looked at this thing, I thought it's a bit boring, and I'd already done part one, which took us up to the end of the 19th century. Now I wanted to do part two, which took us from the end of the 19th century into the 20th century. I thought I'm going to animate all these songs, and so I've done some Disney style animation.
That sounds
Lloyd and
that sounds amazing.
This sounds great. I'm definitely going to have to follow this.
So, anyway, so that will come out in a few weeks' time, I hope.
And Kim, where can people follow you?
Kim, sorry.
Let's see. Right. Oh yeah, Tim and Kim. It sounds similar, but right there at Kim Mattina, and that's on Twitter. It's just my name on Facebook. It's I think Instagram is Kim in Phoenix.
Okay.
So I think that's the only one that's different, but I don't go on Instagram very much.
You must follow me on Instagram.
I will. You know what? I will do that immediately.
Please, and I will return. I will.
Right.
I do follow you, Karen, don't I?
I think so. Yeah, and then also you'll follow Tim on Instagram. Then when obviously new ventures come out, new shows, new set channels, whatever, that's the way to find out. So I have to say, for me, same thing. Follow me at, as you can see, I can't even do this right, but you see that Karen talks a lot. I'm not so good. Yeah, with this opposites thing. And that's on Twitter, on Facebook, and IG. I am at Karen Bell, Bell, like Ding-a-ling, Eisenberg. That's my maiden name. I am so basic and so old that most of my following is on Facebook, but I am trying to slowly migrate over to Twitter and Instagram. This week on Survivor NSFW, first of all, on the free side, right, the shows that you can get without paying, Matt Bischoff and Johnny Fairplay are going to be joined by season 1939 winner Tommy Sheehan at 9:05 p.m. EST on Wednesday night, right after the Survivor Winners at War episode, to discuss it. And then the following Wednesday, Survivor Africa and All Stars alum Lex Vanderberg will be joining Johnny and Matt. Now, also on the Patreon side, Johnny there is a Patreon for Survivor NSFW that gives people access to additional episodes. So an all-new Q&A dropped earlier today, and you can expect some first look Australian Survivor All-Stars interviews and more. So sign up at patreon.com/Survivor NSFW. Also, besides the extra content, the extra podcasts, you get special patron episodes, and you get access to the special Facebook group where you can talk to other patrons. Now, the other thing that Tim doesn't know about this, but Survivor NSFW, what are we known for? We are known for our T-shirts, right? Johnny started years ago, I think even before he had Patreon, selling T-shirts to fund the podcast. And here I have our T-shirt. Let's see if I can get this right. For the U.S. version of the circle. It says Chris and Joey and Rebecca and Sammy and Shuby.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we have not made one for the UK or Brazil, but I could certainly be persuaded to do so. If you buy a t-shirt, right, you not only get a lovely t-shirt, but you get a phone call from Johnny Fairplay. And people are often very skeptical of this. I will tell you, okay, so I'll give you my origin story with Survivor NSFW briefly before we go. I heard Johnny on another podcast 4 or 5 years ago. He was advertising his t-shirts, and I just wanted to buy one to support his whole journey of sobriety and, you know, second chances. And he called me about 3 minutes later, which shocked me. And we talked for about 45 minutes. And I know, yes, I like to talk, but I was very aware of his time. And I just kept saying, don't you have to go? I was shocked that he called me. I was expecting a 5-minute call. And he just kept saying, come on, there's got to be some, you say you're a super fan. What else do you want to know? And over the years, I got to meet Johnny a few times in person. He started a Patreon. I became a patron. And now I'm podcasting for him. So when I say buy a t-shirt or you can get a phone call from Johnny Fairplay, it really is true. So please, again, go to survivornsfw.com and consider joining our Patreon, buying a t-shirt. Please comment. Please come. Let me know on Twitter. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. Once again, Tim and Kim, thank you so much for joining me. And your cats. We've had a few unannounced guests as well. Thank you for also making an appearance. And we will all see you next time.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Karen.
Bye-bye. Thank you.